Frequency Podcast Network. Stories that matter, podcasts that resonate.
By now, you have hopefully heard the term microplastics, because they are everywhere. They are in our water, they're in our air, and they're in our bodies. And we don't know what that's doing to us yet, but we're pretty sure it's nothing good. Here's the thing, though. Like so much other bad news about health and pollution in our bodies, it's been hard to get much traction to really do something about it. When you can't really see or feel something and we only have a vague microscopic sense of what that thing actually is, it tends to take something to shock us out of complacency.
Researchers at Miami University studied a small group of men with erectile dysfunction and discovered 80% of them had tiny fragments of plastic waste in their penises.
On a related note, infertility rates as well as rates of erectile dysfunction have been climbing around the world. Could there be a link between that and this finding? Why does it so often take penises to capture the attention of the public and the media on an issue like this? How do microplastics get into organs like penises anyway? And is there anything you can do to keep them out of yours? I'm Jordan Heath-Rawlings. This is The Big Story. Dr. Ranjith Ramasamy is a US-based reproductive urologist. He led the study that found microplastics in penises. Hello, Dr. Ramasamy.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me.
You're most welcome. I wanted to start, I think most of our listeners are familiar with the term, but just to clarify, what exactly are microplastics? What are we discussing here?
So microplastics, just as the term implies, are basically plastics that are extremely small. So anything less than 50 microns is considered as microplastics. And so any of these small plastics that we can't see with the naked eye are able to be detected only with high-power microscopy, are all classified as microplastics.
And where can they be found?
So in our society, it's basically present in anywhere plastics are seen. So plastic containers, food containers, plastic bags, plastic wrapping paper, plastic bottles. So anywhere we come across plastic, there will be microplastic.
And I know as well as your study, there have been some other studies over the past couple of years that have found microplastics in various parts of the body. Can you explain for us the process by which these tiny particles get from, say, a plastic bag or a plastic container into our body?
So I think the most common route we think is with eating and drinking, so through the GI tract. So when we consume these microplastics, because the size of these particles are so small, they are most likely just traverse through the gut and the intestines when we consume them and get into the bloodstream. There was basically a very large study published in the New England Journal of Medicine earlier this year in 2024, basically showing that these microplastics can actually be found in the heart, in the blood vessels, and in fact, possibly increase the risk of stroke and heart attacks even. And so that's what really prompted us to go back and look at these microplastics more closely to see in which other organs can they actually be found, and potentially can they be sticking to these organs and not clearing up as quickly as we think they are.
Before we get to your study, if you can help us here, how would they impact the lungs and the heart and that kind of stuff? Like, what are they doing in there?
So I don't think we know the mechanism of exactly what they do there. All that we know is it's not supposed to be there.
Right.
You know, this is a human body. We're not supposed to have plastics. And now we have foreign bodies within us because of societal, I don't want to call advances, but changes that I think we now need to go back and figure out, okay, they are there. Does any presence actually cause harm and pathology? Or are there certain levels above which pathology and harm to organs can be caused. So we don't know the answer to that question yet. But I think all we know now are they are present in various organs of the human body. They seem to be present for a long time, well after we've stopped even consuming these plastics. And what they do, I think, remains to be answered.
Why did you and the team want to look for microplastics in the penis specifically?
Sure. So the penis is a very vascular organ, just like because of the study that came out that was published in the heart and the blood vessels, we do know that the penis is actually a very vascular organ. And we as reproductive urologists are focused on studying erectile dysfunction as a disease state and also helping men with their erectile dysfunction with treatment. So we asked ourselves the question, hey, if it's present in the heart and the blood vessels, is it also reaching the penis? And if it is reaching the penis, can they just keep staying there forever? And so that's what piqued our interest in going and looking at the penis in men with erectile dysfunction.
And how did you go about doing that? Like, how do you quantify that kind of study, and what did you find?
So we actually do a surgery for erectile dysfunction called penile implant, during which men undergo an inflatable penile prosthesis for a treatment of erectile dysfunction. During that surgery, it's obviously this was a research study. Patients consented to having a biopsy of their penis during the operation. It causes no change in the outcome of the actual operation because it's a very small piece of penile smooth muscle that we take during the surgery to evaluate the presence of microplastics. And we made sure there's a lot of risk of contamination because everything that we touch in our environment these days has some plastic with it. So we used a lot of scientific rigor to make sure that there is no contamination of plastics in the research that we did. So during surgery, we took a small piece of penile smooth muscle tissue, which we analyzed in the lab for microplastics. And a lot of people ask the question, hey, you're already putting a penile prosthesis in that has plastic in it. Was there cross-contamination? I think we just need to, I just want to assure the viewers and, the listeners, that did not happen. We were also very cognizant of the fact that we were taking plastic and putting it into the penis with the penile prosthesis. But we made sure that only after the biopsy was done and was passed off to the lab was the penile prosthesis even brought into the surgical field.
And in terms of the results, what did you find and how does it compare with the level of microplastics that we've seen in other places in the body?
So we actually found microplastics only in 4 out of the 5 men that we tested. Interestingly, that's fairly similar to microplastics being seen in the other organs in the human body in terms of levels. It's certainly important that we didn't find it in one of the 5 guys. So we actually went back and asked about his lifestyle, and he's an elderly gentleman who doesn't use plastics all the time, uses just regular filtered water for drinking, doesn't take out much, doesn't warm up food in plastic containers, so doesn't get exposed to plastics as much as some of our other patients. So that was very interesting to find that, we did not find it in one of the 5 patients that we tested it in. But in terms of levels, I think it's fairly similar to what other studies have published. There was a study that came out earlier from the University of New Mexico, I think in May of 2024, which is about a month before ours, which basically said that they found microplastics within the testis, in human testis, and as well as in the human semen samples. So in terms of qualitative levels and qualitative types of microplastics found in these different organs, they all fairly seem to be similar. So we're not very surprised that we found it. And we're not surprised that about the types of the microplastics that we identified as well.
You mentioned one of the reasons, obviously, that you're doing this study is to look into causes of erectile dysfunction and infertility. Can you explain a little bit to us the trends that we've been seeing when it comes to ED and infertility?
Sure. So we definitely know that the prevalence of both erectile dysfunction and infertility have been increasing over the last decade. And the usual attribute that we are attributing to now, at least as a field, is to basically say the patient, there's more awareness among patients. And so therefore, patients are coming forward more to address their infertility concerns, to address their erectile dysfunction concerns. Men previously, 10, 15 years ago, refused to go to doctors. And so They often suffered in silence. They didn't want to admit it was their issue. And now I think with equity in society, men are taking charge of their own health. Women are sort of pushing their male partners to go and get tested, to go and get treated. And so I think those are all some common reasons for why we think that the prevalence of infertility and sexual dysfunction is increasing. There used to be a huge taboo in society about 20, 25 years ago that men did not want to admit that they were impotent. Men did not want to admit that they were the reason for the couple's infertility. I think all of that is changing as well right now, and men are taking more charge of their health and wanting to admit this. So I think society itself is contributing to increasing in prevalence with society just being more open. But I think we have to understand that our lifestyles have also changed in the last decade or two, wherein environmental influences are very different now than they were 20 years ago. Our parents didn't certainly drink water as much from plastic bottles. Our parents didn't have takeout containers that could be microwaved, frozen food that came in plastic that needed to get warmed in microwave ovens. So I think society itself has changed. We are exposed to a completely different set of environmental toxic agents than our previous generation did with lead and asbestos were all huge. I think now we're facing a completely different threat that I think we need to research and understand and evaluate.
A study of 5 people in the sample is obviously not huge, but what can we extrapolate from that? And does this tell us anything about microplastics perhaps causing ED and infertility, or what would we have to do to find out if they were contributing?
It is a very small sample size, but I think I want to give credit to the co-authors and the team that were participating in the study. It was a group from Germany that we collaborated with, and our core microscopy experts at the University of Miami as well. The amount of rigor and reproducibility that we put into these 5 men in the study is tremendous, which is why I think it gained as much attention as it did, because we made sure that we sent the samples to 2 different places, both at Miami as well as in Germany. We also made sure that we used 2 different techniques. One was the infrared spectroscopy to identify these microplastics, and we did scanning electron microscopy to actually show these microplastics within the penile smooth muscle tissue. So I think, yes, the sample size is small, but I want to assure the listeners that the scientific rigor and was excellent, and the findings are definitely reproducible. In terms of implications of, how does this lead to sexual dysfunction and possibly infertility for the microplastics that were found inside the testis, I think we are far from answering that question. All that we know is what we found now, that it was identified in the smooth muscle of the penis, because that's the biopsy that we took. We didn't take the entire penis, so we don't know, if it's present in other parts of the penis, the blood vessels of the penis, and so on. But I always describe erection and the penis to people as a smooth muscle. It's a muscle, just like any other part of the human body. Where there are muscles, the penile smooth muscle basically relaxes, it fills with blood, and erection happens. And if the muscle is not strong enough, it's not going to relax as much, and so the blood will not fill in to the penis as much, and erection is never hard. So anytime you have smooth muscle dysfunction within the penis, then you can have erectile dysfunction. But I think we need to understand, 2 very important questions. One, by putting microplastics inside the smooth muscle of the penis, is the muscle not contracting as much, and does that lead to erectile dysfunction? And number 2, is there a certain level beyond which of microplastics actually causes pathology? Having some microplastics may just be completely physiologically normal, and people just go around living, their normal lives. But having more microplastics, or a certain level of microplastics, or even certain types of microplastics, are they causing pathology? I think a lot of questions still remain unanswered, but I think we need to look at it, because whether we like it or not, I think our society has moved in that direction, and I truly mean moved, past tense. I think there are lots of efforts at every level to prevent and to stop the amount of plastics exposure that we are facing. But I think having been exposed to this for such a long time already, I think we need to start studying these questions more.
A slightly delicate question. We already know that microplastics are everywhere. As you mentioned, many studies have found them in all sorts of organs in the body. This study got a ton of attention, though. Why do you think that is?
No, I think the other studies about the heart and the testes also got enough attention. So I don't want to.
I'm not speaking about the quality of those studies, which I'm sure are excellent. But, this has had an outsized media presence. I think it's fair to say.
Right. So I think it's just I think anybody that talks about the penis and sex, I think always we get a lot of media attention. So I think society in general, if you tell a guy, oh my gosh, you're going to have a heart attack, please stop smoking. He'd be like, yeah, sure, doc, no problem. Your penis is not going to work. You're going to get erectile dysfunction. Stop smoking. Oh my gosh, maybe I should stop smoking.
Right.
I think guys in general just wake up and pay a lot more attention when it comes to problems in the bedroom. So anytime there is talk of erectile dysfunction, anytime there is talk of, oh my gosh, penile pathology, I think men and their partners tend to wake up and pay attention a lot more. I think it's just society. I don't think it was anything to do with the actual study itself.
Listen, if this is what it takes to get us to wake up about microplastics being everywhere, it must be worth it.
Listen, I mean, yes, so be it. Men have come to our clinics who are overweight for many years. Losing weight strategies, trying to exercise, trying to diet has never helped. But I tell them, you need to lose 30 pounds so I can do your penile implant surgery so you can go back to having sex. They come back in 3 months having lost that 30 pounds.
Right.
I think we, and I truly want to say we because I'm also in the same boat, we take erections and erectile dysfunction very seriously. I've seen men stop smoking who smoked for many years. I tell them, hey, you're never going to be able to get anesthesia for us to be able to do your surgery. You got to stop smoking. Otherwise, you're going to have a poor outcome with the surgery. They will stop smoking. And so I think now if we say, oh my gosh, microplastics are in the penis, they can potentially lead to erectile dysfunction. I think now as a society, we will wake up and pay attention to this. So be it.
Right.
If this is the research, if this was the final pin that basically made society aware that we need to worry about these things and discuss this as a society and increase the research, so be it. But I think it's just important that we look at the microplastics and just about every organ in the human body because we still don't know.
So last question then, what comes next after this? What are the next steps we can take from this research to better understand the impact that these particles are having?
So I think in general, at least let me phrase the answer to that in two parts. One, for the lay public. I think we need to try and see if we can limit our exposure to microplastics. We should make sure if there is an option of drinking water from a regular water bottle or from a filter and a tap, I think we should use that approach as opposed to drinking water from a plastic water bottle. We should try not microwave food in plastic containers. We should try to limit food that's been exposed and water that's been exposed to plastic. So I think as a society, I think we should just be aware of that and try and limit that as much as possible. And for the scientific community, I think now that we know that it's just about present in almost every organ that we're going to study, we need to start studying mechanisms. How do these plastics enter the human body? How much of it is inhalation? How much of it is ingestion? How much of it is coming from the food versus water? And then if it is present in the human body, what levels are causing pathology? What are the different types of microplastics that are lingering a lot more than the others? Can we as a society try and limit the exposure to the plastics that linger longer in the human body than some of the others? And so I think this raises a lot of scientific research questions that we need to try and answer based on all of the studies that have been published so far.
Dr. Ramasamy, thank you so much for this. It's a really fascinating topic. And to your point, I hope this grabs people's attention and we can start delving deeper into what these things are doing to us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Dr. Ranjith Ramasamy, who led this study. That was The Big Story. For more from us, head to thebigstorypodcast.ca To send us feedback on this episode or any other, please email hello@thebigstorypodcast.ca or call 416-935-5935 and leave us a voicemail. The Big Story is available in every single podcast player, and it is also available on your smart speaker if you ask it to play the Big Story podcast. If you get the chance, please leave a rating or a review in the app of your choice, or just casually tell a friend or an enemy about our show. Thanks for listening. I'm Jordan Heath Rawlings. We'll talk tomorrow.